Welcome, everybody, to It Tastes Different Game Reviews. What we're reviewing today, Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom released May 12th for the Nintendo Switch, published and developed by Nintendo. This thing's got Nintendo all over it. If you don't know what Zelda is, sorry. Zelda is a RPG shooter fighter adventure game. It is one of the most anticipated games coming out this year. And we're just going to jump in and find out if it is the game to beat this year. So I believe Nick is the ultimate Zelda nerd. So we're going to jump to Pat first because we'll never shut Nick up. Pat, what is your thoughts on Tears of the Kingdom? Did it make you cry?
You had to come to me first, didn't you? I have a very unpopular opinion, and this game is just okay. This game is not great. It's not amazing. It took the worst parts of Breath of the Wild and brought them over with it. And it introduced some new things, some new frustrating things and things like that. But I mean, it's Zelda, it's Zelda is all I have to say. I was expecting a lot more out of this one. I was expecting a fully voiced experience. Only the cutscenes are voiced. Hardly anything outside of cutscenes are voiced. And it's so annoying because there is a lot of reading and a lot of talking in this game. And you're just like, where's the voice acting? And then the voice acting was pretty horrible anyway. So it's probably a good thing they didn't. Because in the very beginning, the first cutscene, I thought Zelda was crying, talking about the whatever people. And it turns out I'm like, that's supposed to be a happy thing, right? And then, it is, but she's bad at what she does. So it sounds like she's crying or getting upset. So, but I hate the weapon durability system, and they brought it back from Breath of the Wild. Weapons just break entirely too quick in this game. They did the same thing in Breath of the Wild. So it's causes you to constantly shift out weapons, constantly burn through materials, constantly be on the lookout for that next best weapon. But what ends up happening is you find a really good weapon and you do one of two things with it. You use it and break it and get pissed off because your next weapon isn't half as good as that one, or you never use it. It sits in your inventory. You're like, I'm going to use it when I get in a really tough spot. And you just deal with the crappy weapons for the whole game. That's how I operate anyway. I end up going, I'm going to save that weapon for the big nasty, and then you either get to the big nasty and that weapon doesn't do jack, because it's more of a tactics fight than dealing purely damage, like when you get to like a Shadow Ganon or something like that and having to fight him or whatever. And you're just like, nope, so. The game relies a lot on melding materials forging materials into your weapons and your arrows and your shields and making stuff. Listen, I am a very logical person. I am not a creative person. So there's a lot of like, hey, look at all this building material. Make a creative way to get across over to there. No, I'm going to make a big ass bridge. That's me. Because I'm not a creative person. I'm a logical person. So to me, the building in this game is tedious and annoying to some extent. Because I'm just like, just get me from point A to point B, and let me get there the way I want to get there. But instead, they're like, hey, build something. Build you a car. Build you a rocket-powered carriage. Build you whatever, but build something. And I'm like, no, I just put these two pieces of wood together so I get across that gorge. That's what I'm going to do, So, but it is what it is. So to me, this game is just okay. It's not like Game of the Year contender. It's not like it's not worth $70 to me. I love Zelda, and I like the Zelda games. Breath of the Wild was probably one of the first ones I ran into that I'm just like, I never beat it because I got to the point where I just got so annoyed with the mechanics of the game and the weapon durability system and stuff like that when this one was coming out, I was like, I hope they get rid of the weapon durability. If they do, makes this game 100 times better for me. Not only did they not get rid of it, but then they put in this build-a-thon, build your own game type thing built into here. So instead of the game developers building and crafting you a story, they want you to build your own. So, but that's me. pretty much unpopular opinion. I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't have that same opinion, and that is what it is. That's games, right? This game is just not entirely up for me. I would play it, yes, but I would play it when it went on sale if it wasn't for the review. But Nick, what about you, man? What are your thoughts on this game? What are your thoughts on Tears of the Kingdom? It made me cry a tear, but only because the weapon durability system was back.
I cried a tear with you on that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this game is, I agree with Pat. It's an all right game, right? I don't think it's horrible or bad, like the worst game ever or anything like that. I don't think it's the greatest game ever. A lot of critics online have given it like 10s across the board, which I don't think it deserves. Right. So I don't think it's that high, and personally, in that high of a category. It's very much like Breath of the Wild, which, just like Pat, Breath of the Wild is probably my least favorite Zelda game. There's a lot of Zelda games I love, and Breath of the Wild is really far down on my list. I know for a lot of people out there on the internet, Breath of the Wild is like close to, if not the top of their list, whereas Breath of the Wild is like down towards the bottom of mine. When it comes to Zelda, I'm more of a traditionalist. When it comes to Zelda, I like the traditional Zelda formula of, Ocarina of Time and Link to the Past and, Minish Cap and all those, Majora's Mask and all those types of games where it's basically, you have this pre-built kind of world that you're exploring. They allow you to explore. It's kind of open world, but not really, but enough to give you an exploration, but everything's kind of built. You have the temples, the dungeons that you go into, and you get to explore those. And then you get some sort of power up in those dungeons, which then allow you to use that to beat the boss out of the dungeon. And then you can use that power up, whatever it is, outside in the world, right, to get to various obstacles and various things that you couldn't without it, right? Like the boomerang, or then you get the bow and arrows, and then you get like the fire staff and the ice staff and various things like that, right? And I understand Zelda's been kind of that formula for a long time, so I get that they want to go in a different direction or just try different things out, which I have no problem with. Tears of the Kingdom is pretty much Breath of the Wild 2.0 is what I feel like. Do I think it's better than Breath of the Wild? Yes, I do. I find this more enjoyable, which is not saying much because I don't give a lot of credence to Breath of the Wild, but I think Tears of the Kingdom is a better version of Breath of the Wild. But again, they do bring back the weapon durability, which I think a lot of people don't like. And it's fine if they're going to have durability. And we talked about us here, guys. We talked about this. It's fine if they're going to have durability. We wish they didn't, but if they're going to have it, allow me to repair a weapon, right? Because sometimes you will come across a weapon that you really like, and then after a couple of hits it breaks, and you're like, man, if I could just like have it as being broken, and then I can take it to a blacksmith and like repair it. That would be cool, because I want to hold on to this instead of having to constantly cycle weapons in and out of your inventory all the time. I don't know. I don't very much care for that mechanic. Also, Breath of the Wild, the building aspect is sometimes fun, sometimes not. Depends on what Sometimes it's kind of a mixed bag for me. Sometimes I like building things, but when I build something like really elaborate, it ends up not working. And like Patrick, I just make a bridge and say screw it, because I'm like, I'm going to put this together and that and this, and I'm like, cool. Doesn't work. Well, if I make a bridge, it will. I'll just put these two planks together and that works. I tried to be creative, but I couldn't. So it is what it is. But this game, at the very beginning of this game, it's kind of a tutorial section in the sky is what you pretty much have, which I did personally. I did like that. You go into each shrine gives you a power, and then you go through that shrine learning what that power does and how it can be used. I thought that was really cool. Once you get down from the sky down to the ground, then the first shrine that most people will go into, but maybe not everybody, it teaches you combat. It's really surprising that wasn't a part of one of the shrines up in the sky to teach you combat, being that it's the first, it's definitely one of the first shrines you'll see. And I would suspect that Nintendo thought, well, of course, everybody's going to go in there, but not everybody's going to. I did. and but maybe they didn't, or so anybody else playing didn't, so they may not know that there's a parry system in this game, and how to successfully use your shield and block and stuff like that. Also, if you're like me and probably these guys, if you don't play on your Switch a whole heck of a lot, trying to control this game with a Switch controller, even using the Pro controller, I don't know how many times I've thrown my weapon. I've probably thrown my weapon 1,000,000 times on accident, wanting to bring up the menu for my powers, which is the L button, instead of hitting right, and I go, yeah. And I'm like, wait, oh, there goes my sword. And then hitting all sorts of different buttons. And still, I mean, I've been playing this quite a bit since it launched, but I still end up hitting the wrong buttons on the controller. The game looks good as far as much as the Switch can do for it. It almost kind of looks like Breath of the Wild, but a little bit more cleaned up. But the game does perform 30 frames per second sometimes, and sometimes not, depending on what you're doing. The frames do drop and stuff like that. I hope, that Nintendo, they need a new console. Like, I would love to see Zelda running on like Unreal Engine 5. That would be amazing, right? Even if they wanted to do like a Breath of the Wild type thing, like just think of this, like Tears of the Kingdom, but like running in Unreal Engine or something like that, to where the graphical fidelity is just like off the charts. I know it's not about graphics all the way for a lot of people, but looking at Zelda, and I'm just thinking like this overworld could just be so much more beautiful if they had an engine that could, or if they had a system that could, put everything out there. Because you look out in the distance and where the grass is supposed to be, and there's grass there, it's just blank, right? It's just flat. And you're like, you get closer and there's grass, but far away is just like a green slate out there in the middle of nowhere, right? Whereas a newer, like something like the Xbox or the PlayStation would be able to generate that, and you would be able to see stuff in the distance a little bit more clearly than you can on the Switch. And it's just the limitation of the Switch. So I'm hoping they'll go next with it. I mean, there's a lot to say about this game, but for me, and we'll get Shane's take, but I do want to put this out there for you guys and just kind of see what you guys think. Are you more of a traditionalist Zelda? You like the dungeon crawling traditional style, or do you like this Breath of the Wild kind of open world style? Now, I would rather have the traditional. I'm more of a traditional one. And if Nintendo decides, because Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are going to do very well for them, so of course they're going to make more in this line. And all I'd say is that's fine, Nintendo, if that's what you want to do. But don't abandon the traditional Zelda type games for just this type of game, right? Where this like Skyrim, like open world type of Zelda game. That's fine if they want to do both, but I'd rather them do a mixture of like traditional then open world, tradition, kind of like back and forth type thing, where they release one type and then the other. And not just abandon that traditional type of Zelda for this more open world style. But anywho, I'll just throw that out in the ether and you guys can comment on it. But Shane, what do you think of this game?
I like it probably a little bit more than you. And I think it is just because of the building mechanics, the construction, the creation. That's fun for me. I spent more time doing stupid crap playing with things than I did playing the game in some areas. You come across new materials, new devices. Ooh, what can I do with this? That's fun for me. Problem is, it's also a bad case of patch shinies. Ooh, what's this? And then I forget where the hell I'm going. Thank God you can mark things on the map. My biggest like for the game is the creation stuff. My biggest gripe for the game is it's open world. And I don't like that for Zelda. I agree with you. I would rather have a more, I wouldn't say guided, but a little more focused map where, yeah, I know I got to go here, but I might find some, hidden walls or caves and things like that. I think Zelda works better that way. Now, I'm not a big open world fan anymore. I think I'm burnt out on it because everything and its brother has gone open world. And I'm just not a big fan of the open world stuff anymore because everybody's done it. Everybody's going to continue to do it, and they use it to they use it to be lazy most of the time. Now, Zelda, I don't think was lazy. I don't think the worlds were lazy. It just I want a little more focus. That's all I want from my Zelda worlds. But I couldn't disagree with anything you guys said, especially the controller aspect going from an Xbox or PlayStation. I'm right there with these guys. I was chucking weapons and crap everywhere. You know, it's like, oh, right, I'm going to shoot him with this. Oh, crap, I threw my sword. Ah, crap, I threw an apple. It's one thing after another. The interface is probably another huge issue for me. And, you know, granted, I may have just missed a tutorial or something, but, you know, the three of us talked about it. To eat food, you got to pause, go into your menu. To do many things, you have to pause and go into a menu. I don't like that. I don't like the weapon swapping setup on there. I think a nice hotkey for it would be nice. You know, it's just, there's some things that they just don't do right. And granted, it's Nintendo. So Nintendo to me has always been notorious for control issues, the way they like to set things up for some things. That's just not what I like. But I am also a huge Xbox, you know, controller fanboy. So I love the Xbox controller. It just works and plays so well. And Xbox and PlayStation, those buttons are the same. Even if they are labeled different, they are the same. 99% of the time, the jump button here is going to be the jump button there. Nintendo, the jump button is, you know, hold left bumper, right bumper, sneeze, grab your ass, and, you know, and hope for the best. That's the way they work. I don't understand why Nintendo does that. And they do that with a lot of the games. Metroid Prime remaster they did. It works so much better on the Switch because it went to a more traditional controller setup. So, you know, why they didn't kind of play with the controls a little bit more on Zelda, I don't know. But I think overall the game is really fun most of the time. There's other times it is boring, especially when you don't have the equipment to, you know, make a race car or a plane or build a bridge, and you got to spend a lot of time trying to find the materials to, you know, build your bridge, or it takes forever to get across the map because you don't have, you don't have a fast travel set up yet. I am glad they had the fast travel in here. That is one thing I was very happy for. So, but you know, it's Zelda, it's Breath of the Wild, it's better than, definitely, and it is the peak of the Switch's performance. I don't see the Switch doing any better than this. I think, to me, Mario Odyssey is still the best looking Switch game, and that's the limits of this console. They need to put out a, you know, TV mounted hardware. No more. I love the ideal of the cross, you know, take my console on the go stuff, but I want a traditional console from Nintendo. I need something with some beef in there, some horsepower. But I enjoy the game. It is not $70. That is my biggest pisser off, and I agree with Pat. $70, I better hear Zelda the entire time, even if I don't like the voice actor. And I'm a big voice actor snob, but the voice acting in there, I looked at the credits, it's like you get like 2 lines out of almost everybody. Zelda's the only one who really does any major talking, and her voice doesn't work with the character model. And everybody else is that's the entire damn game. Pisses me off. Just voice acted or not. And to answer your question, yes, we need traditional Zelda back. Yeah, that's just me.
Right. Yep, I'm a traditional Zelda fan too. I much prefer that than what we've got now. And, you know, and don't forget, they decided to throw Gachapon in this game. So, you know, you get to throw in your power cores and get you a bunch of Gachapon out of there. You know, get you a bunch of eggs out of there and see which ones you got. So, I don't know. I find this game actually pushes me to save scum, which I hate doing in games, but I save scum a lot in this game because sometimes I forget I have abilities. You know, I'm like running around going, how do I get up there? how do I get up there, and spend like 15 minutes. And I'm like, oh yeah, I got this stupid thing where I could swim through floors, or whatever, and you're just like, what the heck, so, but it's part of the game. And I'm with Nick. I forget about the controller scheme all the time, because I think the original mapping had like jump is like X or Y or something stupid. And I'm like,
jump was Y and A is dash. But in the options, you can swap that, which works 10 times better.
It does. I'm like, who's jumping with the upper button on the controller pad rather than the one closest where your thumb naturally rests? But yeah, I mean, I fight the controller all the time, and I've caught my brain actually mapping it. I played so much Zelda, they'll pop up B on the thing. I'm like, A. And I've caught myself even today when I was playing it, when I was jumping to get the paraglider out, I'm like, A. And even though the on screen's like push B, I'm like, A. My brain just says A in my head, and I have to keep looking at the controller, and I'm like, X, Y, X, Y, X, Y, X, Y. They do B, A. I have to keep in my brain looking at the controller going, okay, they've reversed the X and Y and the B and the A. And so that's what I have to understand. But it's hard because I get too used to playing like Shane, Xbox controller, or, even Sony controller, where I'm just used to these buttons do certain things. And I, because you can like left shoulder button to automatically use the last power ability that you use. And I'm finally constantly catching myself pushing the right bumper temporarily and then chucking my weapon. So I've gotten in the habit now of holding the shoulder button down. So now I'm like, oh, that's the wrong button. He's about ready to chuck his sword. Let's cancel that and go into the other one menu, You're like, that's a 25 hit damage sword. I don't want to waste that or whatever, so, or you're like, I used my last horn or whatever to make that weapon. I don't want to burn it. But yeah, this game relies very heavily on forging weapons, like taking materials and combining them with weapons to make them stronger, bows included and everything. So, I mean, it's just, to me, that gets old quick, because there's nothing worse than in my opinion, interrupting the continuity or flow of combat. And breaking a weapon mid-combat interrupts the flow of combat like there's no tomorrow. And it flusters me, because I'm like, now I have to hold down the button and cycle through the weapons to pick the one I want, because I broke the one I was using. And now I'm like thrust back into combat, because that all pauses the menu. Anytime you go to, change a weapon or socket something onto an arrow, it pauses the game, and you're just like scrolling through what feels like endless menu, especially like socketing something on an arrow feels like scrolling through an endless menu of just trash, right? Because it's like, it will automatically go back to the last item that you put on an arrow if you just hit the button. But if you don't want that, you put it in, you're like, okay, where is the fruit? Where is the, the frozen fruit? Or where is the fire fruit? And you're just like cycling through there, and it's like they're always at the opposite end of the dang thing. Or my worst is when I go to the left and reach the end, and I'm like, crap, I didn't find it. So now I'm cycling all the way back to the right to find it. I really dislike the setup of the menus and the way that the combat gets interrupted by that type of stuff. So I really am trying to not get frustrated with this game, but it frustrates me to no end in combat. Outside of combat, I can deal. It's pretty interesting. It's cool, and I don't mind wandering around, looking at stuff, trying to explore and find new and cool things. But the open world does feel sometimes that I just wander around aimlessly without direction. And I don't know if you guys have had this problem or not, but I've had issues with the quest tracking. So when you're on a quest and the main storyline, part of the calamity, whatever you want to call it, the upheaval, I think is what they're calling it now, not a calamity. It's an upheaval instead of a calamity. But like the quest will tell you, go see that guy over there by the fire, and the quest marker will still be right where you're standing at. And you're like, what the heck? And the fire pillars are like way out there in the distance. It's not like it's like 2 feet away from you. It's like, I've got to jump, paraglide for a while, land, jump, paraglide for a while more just to get over there. And my quest is still telling me it's back there. So you got to read and pay attention. And that happens all the time in this game to me, where the quest marker just doesn't update. But
I think I think that's actually a part of the game. I don't think it's a bug where the quest marker is not updating. I think because I think that's how they built it, is where they're saying, okay, you need to go do, because this game does not hold your hand whatsoever.
No,
Like it says you need to go over there, like Pat was saying, and then you go, okay, so how do I get there, or where over there? And it's like,
pull out your iPhone.
over there, and you're like, over there where? You're like, that way. That's basically what the game is saying, that way. And you're like, that way, and like, maybe, or it could be that way.
Yeah.
It's like
playing clues, right?
It's like Labyrinth, the game, like talking to that worm.
Yeah, like one of the first villages.
They want you to use your cell phone thing. I can't remember what the hell they called it.
Purapad.
Purapad, yeah. God, Microsoft.
Yeah, you got to get your Android at the beginning out of the box.
But I mean, that's the truth. They just tell you, like, go there. Like, in one of the first areas you have to go to, the bridge is out. And you're like, well, how the hell do I get over there? And you just figure it out. They don't tell you anything on repairing the bridge, or if you can repair the bridge, or how to get across the gap. It's just bridge is out, figure it out. And you're like, okay, I'll wander around aimlessly for 20 or 30 minutes trying to figure this out. Maybe die a few times trying to jump the gorge,
Yeah.
Trying to get my rocket buggy so I can launch it across, or whatever.
I think Elden Ring created a monster, because they don't hold your hand. They don't really give you direction. They just, you figure it out as you go, but it's done quite well. And I think too many games are going to start doing that. And that's what
but Elden Ring doesn't force me to replace my weapon every time I enter combat.
No. It just forces you to tuck and roll from a squirrel all the time.
I mean, Breath of the Wild did the same thing with the markers and stuff. Like, that's just kind of how they built it. And I mean, Elden Ring had the same idea.
I don't remember it in Breath of the Wild. That's why I was thinking that something was wrong. Yeah.
But with Elden Ring, yes, they just do it much better, right? Because Elden Ring says you need to go off this direction. But Elden Ring, I feel like in a sense, kind of still, in some weird cosmic way, still kind of guides you, even though you don't realize it. Where Zelda is just like, it's over there, and you go, okay, game, thanks. Can you help me? And it's like, that's the game. It's just looking off somewhere else, or it's gone, And it's like, oh, okay, never mind. I guess I'll just do it on my own. It's really weird how like it's weird. And at the same time, non-handholdy, which, in some cases I like, but in this game, I like, I don't mind that they don't hold my hand, but I'd like a little bit of clearance because, it's a few times with the dot not updating, I have gone back. When I first started the game, I had gone back and thought, well, was I supposed to do something over here? And then I'm like, well, I can't find anything. Screw it. I'm just going to go that way. And then found like the guy, and then it updates up there. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I was just supposed to go out on my own and figure it out myself. And it was just,
it's just stupid because the quest marker is still telling me. And I've done the same thing. I went back because I'm like, what did I miss? What did I miss? What did I miss? And I'm like looking around. I'm like, I didn't miss anything. And then you get frustrated and you just move on. Like, so, and the open world stuff does drive me a little bit nuts because I am one of those people who did not go to the shrine that Nick is talking about when you first landed. I'm like, no. I pulled out my camera and I went to a completely different shrine because I'm like mapped them all like it tells you to do. And I'm like, that one looks like it's closer than that one. So my brain said, logically, let's go that way and make a big circle around the area. And so that's what I did. And I'm sitting here going, why am I getting the crap pushed out of me all the time? Because I'm trying to hack and slash this. Because it's not like majority of the time you run into a singular enemy. There's like 2 and 3 always together. And I'm like, so I should be able to hack and slash this because there's really not a real good way to defense dodge all 3 of these, wait for an open attack and do my thing. But that's what they expect you to do. And then you run into the combat one and it's like, oh, there's a parry system. Oh, there's a dodge system. Oh, there's a perfect dodge where I can come back in and just slash the crap out of them. Okay, cool. And then, I ran to multiple shrines that I needed something. I ran into 2 shrines that I needed the paraglider for before you got it. And that annoyed the piss out of me because I had to Google it. And I'm like, oh, I need the paraglider. I don't have it. So I need to just focus on the story to get a bunch of abilities before I start doing shrine hopping. And that really annoyed me right there because it's like
you just didn't build a big enough bridge.
Unfortunately, all I had was a fan. There's no way I'm building a bridge with a singular fan. So
yeah, I mean, the one piece of advice if you haven't played this game yet and you're planning to is follow the main storyline for a little while, right? Until it tells you to go. Basically, at one point, it's going to give you like options. Once it gives you options, then by all means, go crazy, right? But when you first start, just kind of follow the main story beats until you get to that point, because you'll be better off. You'll get things that you need. Also, with this game, on Metacritic, it's a 96 critic score, but an 8.7 user score. So I think a lot of users out there are kind of more or less in the same boat that we are. Right. Overall, right. That's an overall score. I mean, I'm sure there's like tens in there, but there's also some lower scores of people that just, have probably the same issues or maybe don't like the Breath of the Wild type game. I mean, I've read some of them, and a lot of people did like Breath of the Wild, but didn't care for this one. And then some people had other complaints. Right. So even though critics is going, as far as this game goes, it's going to be a Game of the Year nominee, and I'm not going to be surprised if it's not going to win some sort of Game of the Year somewhere, right?
Nope.
From somebody.
Redfall.
Redfall. Yeah, that's Game of the Year. But, and I think Breath of the Wild did too when it came out. It won Game of the Year or Game of the Year in something. I can't remember, because there's a lot of people that give Game of the Year out, right? And it won at least with one of them, if not more. And just like Breath of the Wild, I don't think this game deserves it either, right? I think they're good games for what they are, but it's not the Zelda that I want. And so, even though I am having an overall fun time playing through it, I'd rather have a traditional Zelda game than have the open world Skyrim, Assassin's Creed-ish version of Zelda. But, it is what it is. Nintendo's going to make what they want. This game, though, Tears of the Kingdom, it does seem like this game was originally, and I think we had heard like rumors and things like this, that this game was originally a DLC or supposed to be a DLC, because they are using the same exact map as Breath of the Wild. Now, granted, this is a sequel, right? They usually don't do sequels. It's a whole new game, right? But this is a sequel to Breath of the Wild. But the map, the overworld map is the same. Everything's in the same spot: Rito Village and Gerudo Village, Death Mountain, and Hyrule Castle. Except for we have the upheaval now, so some things are in the sky, and then you have the underworld, the depths, which is new to this as well, which is cool. It's kind of barren down there, but it's cool. In the sky portion's neat, right? You can go up there in the sky and all sorts of things. And then you have the overworld down below. Which is, like I said, it's the same, but they've mixed things up there, right? They've mixed things up. Different stuff is going on, but the layout's the same. So if you played a lot of Breath of the Wild, you'll probably be familiar with where everything's at. For me, I haven't played Breath of the Wild in so long that I'm like, oh, everything's new to me, except for when I got to Rito Village, and I'm like, hey, this looks familiar. I remember this. And when I got to Gerudo Village, I was like, hey, I remember this from Breath of the Wild, because it looks exactly the same, right? Except for there's some other crisis going on, but it looks the same. But getting there, going from point A to point B, I have nothing looks the same. But when I get to the big main villages that you get to in Breath of the Wild, then I notice like, oh yeah, I remember this village from that one. And, everything, all the layout, everything like that is the same. So, but, is it a $70 game? No. And I don't know. I mean, again, with the whole $70 thing, this is just a way for Nintendo to make you buy. This game being $70 kind of takes the original stance of why games need to be $70 out the window, right? It's like new hardware brings on new development costs, which brings on the need for a price increase of the game. And then we get a $70 Switch game. It's like you kind of pulled the rug off of that one, didn't you, Nintendo? With the $70, you're like, Tears of the Kingdom, it's Zelda. People will pay $70 for this, and hell yeah, they will. So smart move by them, but still stupid.
Yeah, it's pretty sad that they charged 70 because they knew they could get 70. And they did. They got 70. It's selling well. And yeah, Game of the Year was 2017, Breath of the Wild, for the VGAs, which I was trying to remember what else came out in 2017, but I can't remember a squat. So, but I think the game is a $40 game. max. I mean, I can't remember what Breath of the Wild came out though. When it came out, was it a little bit higher than everybody
It was
else?
60.
Was it
I
a
think
60?
it was a $60 game. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, it's a fun game at times. It's a bad game at times. It's not a $70 game at any time. So, but you guys got anything else before we beat this Link to death?
It's better than Redfall.
Why you don't beat Epona? Come on, don't beat Epona to death.
All right. Well, that's the end of the show. If you guys have any comments, let us know. Tell us what you think about Zelda in general. Tell us what you think about Breath of the Wild. Tell us what you think about Tears of the Kingdom. Did it make you cry when you dropped that $70? Because it sure the hell did me. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit those notifications. Tell your friends, give us a listen, and we'll see you next time. See ya.